The human brain, yaar, it's a marvel of evolution. A 3-pound universe of intricate connections, responsible for our every thought, our every emotion, our very existence, you see. But what if I told you the same extraordinary organ, designed for survival and pleasure, can also become its own greatest saboteur? What if its very mechanisms for learning and reward can be twisted, corrupted, leading us down paths we never intended, into the inescapable grip of addiction? Imagine, for a moment, the desperate whisper of a craving, a primal urge that overrides reason, logic, and self-preservation. It's not just a lack of willpower, believe me. It's a profound neurological transformation, a rewiring of the very essence of who we are. Consider a young, promising student, perhaps someone like Rohan, a brilliant computer engineer from Bangalore, whose life spiraled into a relentless cycle of online gambling. He started with small bets, a thrill, a fleeting sense of mastery. Soon, those small bets became large, then reckless, driven not by the joy of winning, but by an insatiable need to chase the next high, the next flutter of anticipation. His brain, you see, had been reprogrammed. His priorities had shifted. His life, once full of potential, was now meticulously orchestrated around the next opportunity to feed a digital hunger. This isn't a story of moral failing, it is a profound testament to the brain's susceptibility, its inherent vulnerability to the very systems designed to keep us alive and thriving. The question then becomes, how does this incredibly sophisticated organ, our brain, create these chains of addiction? How does it turn pleasure into a prison? This isn't just about drugs or alcohol, it's about anything that can hijack our internal reward system, from social media likes to extreme sports, from sugary treats to compulsive shopping. For centuries, addiction was viewed through a lens of morality, a weakness of character, a choice. But modern neuroscience, leveraging advanced imaging techniques and meticulous research, has peeled back the layers of this complex phenomenon, revealing a far more intricate and unsettling truth. Addiction, we now understand, is not merely a bad habit, it is a chronic, relapsing brain disease, fundamentally altering the brain's structure and function. It's a condition where our very biology turns against us, where the pursuit of a fleeting sensation becomes the ultimate, all-consuming drive. To truly grasp this, we must journey deep within the confines of our own skulls, exploring the hidden pathways, the chemical messengers, and the intricate dance of neurons that orchestrate our desires, our motivations, and ultimately, our addictions. It's a journey into the dark corners of human psychology, revealing how our own brains can become the architects of our undoing. At the very core of addiction lies a phenomenon so powerful, so primitive, that it governs much of our behavior, the brain's reward system. This isn't just some abstract concept, it is a meticulously evolved network of neural structures designed to ensure our survival. Think of it as our internal motivational engine, rewarding us for actions crucial to our existence, like eating, drinking, and reproduction. When we engage in these life-sustaining behaviors, a powerful neurotransmitter called dopamine is released in a specific region of the brain known as the nucleus accumbens, a key component of the mesolimbic pathway. This surge of dopamine creates feelings of pleasure, satisfaction, and a powerful urge to repeat the behavior. It's like a biological "Aata boy" signal, instructing our brain, "Do that again. That was good for survival." Pioneering research in the 1950s by James Olds and Peter Milner at McGill University provided some of the earliest insights into this system. They discovered that rats, given the opportunity to self-stimulate electrodes implanted in their nucleus accumbens, would choose this electrical stimulation over food, water, and even their own offspring, stimulating themselves repeatedly until exhaustion. This was a profound, almost terrifying revelation. The brain could be directly hijacked, its natural reward pathways overwhelmed by an artificial, yet intensely pleasurable, stimulus. It was a stark demonstration of the immense power of this internal reward mechanism. Now, fast forward to today. When addictive substances like nicotine, alcohol, cocaine, or even highly palatable foods enter the system, they bypass the natural regulatory mechanisms and flood the nucleus accumbens with dopamine. Cocaine, for instance, prevents dopamine from being reabsorbed by the neurons, leading to a massive, prolonged surge. Heroin, on the other hand, mimics natural opioids, indirectly increasing dopamine release. The initial experience is often described as intensely pleasurable, far more potent than natural rewards. This creates a powerful memory, a neurological imprint, associating the substance or behavior with an unprecedented rush of euphoria. But here's the catch, the devious twist in this neurological tale. Our brains are incredibly adaptive, you see. When repeatedly exposed to these unnaturally high levels of dopamine, the brain attempts to restore balance. It does this by reducing the number of dopamine receptors in the nucleus accumbens, a process known as downregulation, or by decreasing the amount of dopamine it naturally produces. This is what leads to tolerance, where a person needs more of the substance or behavior to achieve the same initial high. And when the substance is removed, the brain, now depleted of its natural dopamine resources and craving that intense stimulation, enters a state of withdrawal. This isn't just discomfort, no doubt. It's a profoundly unpleasant experience, marked by dysphoria, anxiety, and an overwhelming craving. This craving isn't about pleasure anymore. It's about alleviating distress, about restoring some semblance of normal brain function. It's a shift from liking the drug to desperately wanting it, a concept brilliantly articulated by researchers Kent Berridge and Terry Robinson in their Incentive Salience theory in 1998. The reward system, once a benevolent guide, transforms into a relentless taskmaster, driving the individual to seek the source of their temporary relief, creating a vicious, self-perpetuating cycle. Consider the example of nicotine addiction. A first-time smoker experiences a rapid dopamine surge, a momentary relaxation, perhaps a feeling of alertness. This positive reinforcement, often in a social context, creates a strong association. Over time, the brain adapts, requiring more cigarettes to achieve that initial feeling. Soon, smoking isn't just about the high, it's about staving off the irritability, the anxiety, the intense, nicotine hunger of withdrawal. The very act of smoking becomes less about pleasure and more about avoiding discomfort, a classic hallmark of dopamine system dysregulation in addiction. It's quite fascinating how this intricate system, designed for our benefit, can be so powerfully co-opted. Moving beyond the initial rush, addiction profoundly exploits another fundamental aspect of our brain, its remarkable capacity for plasticity and learning. Our brains are not static entities, they are dynamic, ever-changing landscapes, constantly remodeling themselves based on our experiences. This phenomenon, known as neuroplasticity, is how we learn new skills, form memories, and adapt to our environment. In the context of addiction, this adaptability becomes a double-edged sword, reinforcing addictive behaviors until they become deeply ingrained habits, almost automatic responses. This transformation from voluntary action to automatic habit involves a shift in brain activity from the prefrontal cortex, responsible for conscious decision-making and planning, to the dorsal striatum, a region associated with habit formation and procedural learning. Initially, using a substance or engaging in a compulsive behavior is a conscious choice, often driven by curiosity or social influence. But with repeated exposure, the neural pathways associated with that behavior strengthen. This strengthening, known as long-term potentiation, makes it easier for the brain to fire those specific neural circuits again. It's like paving a dirt road into a superhighway. The more you use it, the smoother and faster the path becomes. Researchers like Anne Graybiel and her colleagues at MIT have extensively studied the role of the dorsal striatum and basal ganglia in habit formation. Their work has shown how repeated actions, even complex sequences, can eventually be chunked together and executed with minimal conscious effort. In addiction, this means that specific cues, a particular time of day, a certain place, a feeling of stress, or even the sight of paraphernalia, can trigger an automatic craving and subsequent drug-seeking behavior, bypassing rational thought. The act itself becomes almost reflexive, divorced from its original pleasurable intent. Take, for instance, the case of someone addicted to prescription painkillers like opioids, perhaps initially prescribed for a legitimate injury. With prolonged use, the brain doesn't just develop tolerance, it learns. It learns to associate the pill with the relief from pain, yes, but also with a sense of calm, an escape from emotional distress. Soon, the act of reaching for the bottle, perhaps at the first sign of discomfort or even just out of boredom, becomes an automatic response. The individual might not even be consciously thinking about the high anymore. Their brain has been trained to execute the habit. They might find themselves taking a pill simply because it's 5 p.m. or because they've just finished work, without even making a conscious decision to do so. This is the insidious nature of habit formation in addiction. The behavior becomes deeply etched into the neural circuitry, operating almost independently of conscious will. Moreover, the brain's learning mechanisms contribute to the powerful conditioned responses seen in addiction. Ivan Pavlov's classical conditioning experiments, where dogs learn to associate a bell with food, have a striking parallel in addiction. The brain learns to associate environmental cues with the drug experience. For example, a person recovering from alcohol addiction might suddenly feel an intense craving simply by walking past their old favorite pub, or by hearing the clink of ice in a glass. These cues, through repeated association, become powerful triggers, capable of eliciting physiological responses like increased heart rate and intense urges, even years after sobriety. This is not a failure of willpower. It's the brain's incredibly efficient learning system working against the individual, constantly reminding them of the reward it once received. The brain, having been plastic enough to learn the addiction, unfortunately, also retains that learning with remarkable tenacity, making relapse a constant threat. It's a cruel trick of our own biology, isn't it? Beyond the immediate grip of the reward system and the relentless pull of habit, addiction profoundly impacts the brain's higher-order functions, particularly those related to decision-making, impulse control, and emotional regulation. This brings us to the crucial role of the prefrontal cortex, a region located at the front of our brain, often considered the CEO of our mental faculties. The prefrontal cortex, or PFC, is responsible for executive functions, planning, problem-solving, assessing risks and rewards, regulating emotions, and inhibiting impulsive behaviors. It's what allows us to delay gratification, to think about future consequences, and to make rational choices. However, in individuals struggling with addiction, functional neuroimaging studies, such as those conducted by Dr. Nora Volkow and her colleagues at the National Institute on Drug Abuse, NIDA, in the early 2000s, have consistently shown significant impairments in the prefrontal cortex. Specifically, there's often reduced activity and a lower density of dopamine D2 receptors in this region. What does this mean, you ask? It means the brain's ability to exert self-control, to override impulsive urges, and to make sound judgments is severely compromised. The brakes of the brain, so to speak, are significantly weakened. Consider the intricate dance between the prefrontal cortex and the limbic system, particularly the amygdala. The amygdala, often called the brain's fear center, plays a critical role in processing emotions, especially fear and anxiety, and in encoding emotionally charged memories. In addiction, the limbic system, driven by the intense cravings and the distress of withdrawal, becomes hyperactive, sending powerful go signals. Simultaneously, the weakened prefrontal cortex struggles to send the stop signals. It's like trying to drive a car where the accelerator is stuck and the brakes are failing. The emotional brain is screaming for relief, and the rational brain is too weak to resist. This imbalance is particularly evident in situations involving stress. Stress, whether chronic or acute, is a major trigger for relapse. Research by George Koob and Michel Lermoal, 2008, on the allostatic load model of addiction highlights how prolonged drug use leads to dysregulation of the brain's stress response systems. When a person under recovery experiences stress, perhaps a job loss, a family conflict, or even just daily frustrations, their amygdala goes into overdrive, activating the fight or flight response. For someone with a weakened PFC, the immediate, learned response is often to seek the substance or behavior that previously offered temporary relief, even if they know, intellectually, it will cause more problems in the long run. The brain, in its desperate attempt to cope, defaults to the pathways of addiction. Think of the story of Samir, a successful businessman from Mumbai, who struggled with cocaine addiction for years. He managed to achieve sobriety for a period, with immense effort. But during a particularly brutal economic downturn, his business faced severe losses, and the stress was immense. Despite knowing the devastating consequences, his weakened prefrontal cortex could not effectively override the overwhelming surge of anxiety and the powerful urge to escape that the cocaine once provided. He relapsed, not because he lacked desire to stay sober, but because his brain's executive control was severely compromised under pressure, leaving him vulnerable to the primal pull of addiction. His rational mind, the very part that built his business, was rendered helpless in the face of his hijacked emotional brain. This is why addiction is a disease, not a simple choice. The brain structures essential for choice itself are profoundly altered. While the intricate dance of neurotransmitters and neural pathways paints a compelling picture of how addiction takes hold within the brain, we cannot ignore the broader canvas of our existence, the interplay of our genetic makeup and the environment we inhabit. It's a classic nature versus nurture debate, but in addiction, it's really an either-or scenario. It's almost always a complex, synergistic interaction. Let's first consider genetics. No doubt, addiction is not simply inherited like eye color, but research unequivocally shows a significant genetic component. Twin studies, such as those conducted by Kenneth Kendler and colleagues in the early 1990s, have consistently demonstrated that identical twins, who share nearly 100% of their genes, are more likely to both develop addiction than fraternal twins, who share only about 50% of their genes. This suggests that certain genetic predispositions can increase an individual's vulnerability. These genes might influence various aspects: how quickly the body metabolizes a substance, the number of dopamine receptors in the brain, or even an individual's innate stress response. For instance, specific genetic variants can affect the sensitivity of the reward system, making some individuals more prone to experiencing intense pleasure from addictive substances, thus increasing their risk of developing dependence. Others might have genetic predispositions that impact their ability to metabolize alcohol, leading to greater tolerance or, conversely, greater adverse reactions, influencing their drinking patterns. This is not a destiny, mind you, but a predisposition, a heightened risk. However, genetics are never the whole story. The environment plays an equally critical role, acting as a powerful sculptor of our brains and behaviors. Our early life experiences, in particular, can profoundly shape our vulnerability to addiction. Childhood trauma, neglect, abuse, or even chronic stress can alter brain development, especially in areas like the prefrontal cortex and the amygdala, making individuals more susceptible to impulsive behaviors and less capable of managing stress effectively later in life. These early adversities can literally hardwire a brain for anxiety and heightened reactivity, making self-medication through addictive substances or behaviors a tempting, albeit destructive, coping mechanism. It's like setting the stage for the drama of addiction long before the curtain even rises. Moreover, the immediate social and cultural environment exerts immense influence. Peer pressure, socioeconomic status, the availability of substances, cultural norms around drug use, and even advertising all contribute to the likelihood of developing an addiction. Someone growing up in a community where substance use is normalized, where access is